Emergency alert. They are back from the dead, but they're not themselves. The silence wasn't the first thing that felt wrong, but it was the most pervasive. Before the silence, there was the music box. Hilaire's music box. Delicate porcelain ballerina, chipped on one outstretched hand from when she dropped it years ago, spinning slowly to a tinny, ethereal rendition of Claire de Lune. Except Hilaire was dead, 6 months gone. Cancer, fast and cruel. The music box had sat silent on the mantelpiece since the funeral, gathering dust, a painful monument to the quiet that had consumed our house. Tonight, around midnight, it started playing. Just like that. No winding, no prompt. The melody drifted down the stairs, each note a tiny icicle piercing the late-night stillness. I froze in the kitchen, midway through pouring a glass of water I didn't really want. My first thought, absurdly, was batteries, except it didn't run on batteries. It was clockwork, old clockwork that hadn't been wound in half a year. I crept into the living room, heart pounding a stupid, rabbit rhythm against my ribs. The ballerina twirled, bathed in the weak moonlight filtering through the bay window. Her painted smile seemed unervingly fixed. I reached out, my hand trembling slightly, and gently touched the porcelain figure. The music stopped instantly. Silence crashed back in, heavier than before. I stood there for a long minute, listening to the frantic thumping in my chest, telling myself it was a spring settling, humidity, a freak occurrence, grief playing tricks on my mind, anything but what it felt like, a fragile, impossible connection to someone who was gone. If only I'd trusted that initial, gut-wrenching wrongness. If only I'd walked out the door right then, driven until the gas tank ran dry. But where would I have gone? From what? A malfunctioning music box? I shook my head, rubbed my temples, the familiar ache of loss throbbing behind my eyes. Too much whiskey tonight, maybe. Trying too hard to numb the quiet. I went back to the kitchen, downed the water, glanced at the clock. 12:17 a.m. The house felt colder than it should. I checked the thermostat. It was off. The display was blank. Strange. I flicked a light switch. Nothing. Went to the breaker box in the basement. Flashlight beam cutting nervously through the damp, spiderweb darkness. All breakers were flipped on. No tripped circuits. Back upstairs, the entire house was dead. No power. I checked my phone. Usually full bars here in Oak Haven Heights. Tonight, nothing. No service. Wi-Fi icon grayed out. Useless black brick. The landline I kept for emergencies. Dead air. A complete, hollow void on the line. Okay, this wasn't just my house. This was bigger. I went to the front window, parting the heavy curtains cautiously. Outside, Maple Street was plunged into an unnatural darkness. The streetlights were out, every single one. Porch lights on neighboring houses. The Garcia's bright LED, old Mrs. Henderson's perpetually flickering yellow bulb, all extinguished. The only illumination was the thin, watery moonlight washing over silent lawns and dark, watchful windows. It looked like a stage set after the play had ended, waiting to be dismantled. The usual suburban night sounds, the distant hum of the highway, the occasional barking dog, the late-night train whistle, all absent. The silence was absolute, profound, pressing in on my eardrums. It wasn't peaceful. It felt predatory, holding its breath. And in that suffocating silence, I saw him, across the street, Mr. Abernathy, standing ramrod straight in the middle of his perfectly manicured lawn, next to his prize-winning gnome collection. He was facing my house, just standing there, perfectly still, which would have been odd enough at nearly 1 a.m. in a total blackout. But Mr. Abernathy had died 3 weeks ago. Massive coronary. Found him myself when his newspapers piled up. Attended the sparsely populated funeral. Saw the hearse pull away from St. Jude Cemetery. My blood turned to ice water. It couldn't be him. A trick of the light? A prowler? But the silhouette, the distinctive slump of his left shoulder, the way he held his head, it was Abernathy, unmistakably. He didn't move, didn't shiver in the chill night air, just stood there, a fixed point in the darkness, staring toward my house. Or perhaps staring through it. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed his way up my throat. I stumbled back from the window, heart hammering, locked the front door, sliding the deadbolt with trembling fingers. Checked the back door, the windows, drawing curtains, pulling blinds, trying to seal myself inside the suddenly terrifyingly fragile house. What was happening? An invasion? Some kind of mass hallucination? Or something worse? Then my phone buzzed weakly in my hand. Once. The screen flickered to life for a brief, miraculous moment, displaying a garbled emergency alert system message. White text stuttered against a black background, broken, incomplete. NAL emergency Oakhaven area, Ease retur, do not engage, EY are not themselves. Repeat, the dead, OT who they were, void contact, Radical protocol, act from the dead, they're not, Acure premises ran mission termin. It died again, plunging back into useless blackness. But the message burned behind my eyes. Deceased returning, not themselves. Avoid contact. Mr. Abernathy. Ilara's music box. It wasn't grief. It wasn't a power outage. It was real. The dead were coming back. And they were wrong. A low moan escaped my lips. Ilara, was she... Could she? The thought was unbearable, a toxic mix of terror and a desperate, treacherous hope. No, stop it, not themselves. The alert was clear. Whatever was happening, it wasn't resurrection. It was something else. An occupation? A puppetry? I needed information. Needed rules. How did this work? What were the dangers? I remembered old Mrs. Gable down the street, a woman steeped in local folklore, always muttering about thin spots between worlds and protective charms. She used to tell us kids nonsensical rules during Halloween. Never eat food offered by someone who crossed the cemetery path after sundown. If a shadow lingers after the person leaves, lock your door thrice. 3 knocks mean welcome, for knocks mean wanting. Utter rubbish. Except, maybe not anymore. For knocks mean wanting. Wanting what? I try to recall more anything. Something about mirrors? Something about answering questions? My mind felt foggy. Adrenaline scrambling rational thought. Then a knock at the front door. Not loud. Soft. Almost hesitant. For distinct raps. Knock. 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 My heart leaped into my throat. 4 knocks. Wanting. Silence. Then a voice. My father's voice. Low, gravelly, instantly recognizable, though he'd been dead for 10 years. Michael? Son? You all right in there? Saw the lights go out. Just checking. It sounded exactly like him. The slight Kansas accent he never lost, the weary kindness in his tone. But it was impossible. He was buried 2 states away. And the 4 knocks. Just open the door, son. The voice pleaded, sounding worried now. Let your old man see you're okay. Rule, don't respond to familiar voices you know belong to the dead. Where did that come from? My own panic brain manufacturing defenses? Or a fragment of buried knowledge surfacing? I didn't care. I backed away from the door, heart pounding, held my breath, listened. Michael? Silence. A long, drawn-out pause. Then a faint sigh from the other side of the door. Not disappointment. It sounded like assessment, calculation, followed by the soft crunch of footsteps retreating across the porch and down the steps. It hadn't tried to force its way in. It had tested me. Knocked 4 times, used a familiar voice. When I didn't respond, it left, learning the rules. They were learning. The thought sent a fresh wave of cold dread through me. What else did they know? What else could they mimic? I needed a weapon. Anything. Found a heavy Maglite flashlight in the kitchen drawer. Its beam felt blessedly solid in the oppressive dark. In the hall closet, behind dusty coats, was my old aluminum baseball bat. Lighter than I remembered, but better than nothing. Armed. I felt marginally less helpless. Marginally. I crept back to the window, overlooking Abernathy's house. He was gone. The lawn was empty. Where had he gone? Was he circling, testing other houses? Or had he been recalled somehow? The silence outside deepened, if that was even possible. Then A faint sound drifted to the night air. Humming. A woman's voice, humming Claire de Lune. Ilara's tune, coming from somewhere down the street. My breath hitched. Was it her? Had she returned? Was she out there looking for me? Part of me, the desperate, grieving part, wanted to run outside, call her name. But the alert, the wrongness of Abernathy, my father's voice at the door, they screamed caution, not themselves. I forced myself to stay put, listening as a humming faded into the distance. Were they coordinating? Using familiar sounds, familiar voices, to lure people out? I needed to see, needed to understand what I was facing. The back of my house overlooked several yards, including the Garcias next door. Their teenage son, Mateo, had died in a car crash last summer. Tragic. Young life cut short. I went to the upstairs spare room window, which offered the best view, pulled the curtain back an inch. The Garcias' backyard was dark, dominated by the large oak tree Mateo used to climb, and standing beneath it, partially hidden in shadow, was a figure, roughly Mateo's height and build, motionless, facing the back door of the Garcia house, just standing there, like Abernathy, waiting, observing. As I watched, the figure slowly raised its head, looking up towards the second-floor windows of its former home. Even in the dim moonlight, I could see its face was slack and motionless. Its eyes seemed too wide, reflecting the scant light with a flat, dead quality. Then it started tapping, one finger, tapping rhythmically against the trunk of the oak tree. Tap, 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 tap. A pattern, a signal, or just wrong behavior? Suddenly, the Garcia's back porch light flickered on, then off, on, off, on, off, 3 times. My gut clenched. Rule: 3 flashes mean the house is compromised. Had they let Mateo in? Or had he gotten in another way? The figure under the tree stopped tapping. It turned, its movement stiff, almost robotic, and shuffled toward the back door. It didn't knock. It simply reached out, turned the knob, and let itself in. The porch light went out again, plunging the yard back into darkness. Compromised. Whatever Abernathy and the thing that looked like my father were, they weren't just wandering aimlessly. They were targeting homes, getting inside. And the Garcias, what was happening to them now? The implications were horrifying. This wasn't just about avoiding contact outside. The danger could already be inside your neighbor's house, inside your own. I thought of Ilara, her music box, the humming. Was she trying to get back in? The idea made my skin crawl. I checked the locks again, wedged a chair under the knob of the back door, another under the front. Pathetic defenses, probably, but it made me feel slightly less exposed. I needed more rules, more information. I remembered Ilara kept an old emergency crank radio in the pantry. Maybe, just maybe it could pick something up. I found it tucked behind bags of flour and sugar. Cranked the handle frantically, sweat beading on my forehead. Static crackled, sputtered. I spun the dial, hoping for a voice, a signal. Nothing but hiss. Then a fragment, weak and distorted, buried under layers of static. Repeat: Oakhaven and surrounding areas under quarantine. Phenomenon designated echo strain. Reports confirm reanimation of deceased individuals. Subject exhibit baseline memories, mimicry, but lack genuine effect, display anomalous physical traits. Cold body temperature, unnatural stillness, followed by jerky movements. Potential luminescence in optic nerves. Do not be deceived by familiarity. Key behavioral markers. They cannot replicate complex emotional responses. They struggle with nuanced memory recall. Ask specific, emotionally charged questions only the living would grasp. Observe pupil response to light. Aberrant tracking is a key indicator. There are rules circulating, some apocryphal, some proving consistent. Rule 7. Sustenance offered by them is toxic to the living. Rule 12. Direct questions about the moment of death cause system shock, temporary paralysis. Repeat. Do not consume anything they offer. Ask about death specifics. If cornered, stay indoors. Help is The signal dissolved into impenetrable static. Echo strain. Luminescence in optic nerves. Can't replicate complex emotion. Struggle with nuanced memory. Sustenance is toxic. Ask about death specifics. Pupil tracking. More pieces. More terrifying clarity. They looked like loved ones, sounded like them, had their memories but were hollow shells. And dangerous. The coldness. Abernathy hadn't seemed bothered by the night air. The stillness. Mateo under the tree. Jerky movements. Mateo walking to the door. It fit. And the rules, some were real. Sustenance is toxic. Ask about death. I shuddered, thinking of my father's voice at the door. What if I had let him in? Offered him a drink? The thought was nauseating. Then I heard it. Faint scratching. At the back door. Soft, persistent. Scritch. Scritch. My blood ran cold. Was it her? Elara? I crept toward the kitchen, bat held high, mag light beam trembling. The scratching stopped. Silence. Then her voice. Soft, hesitant, muffled by the door. Michael? Mike, honey, it's me. Let me in. It sounded exactly like her. The way she called me Mike when she was worried. The slight tremor in her voice. Oh, God. Mike, please. The voice pleaded. Tears audible now. I woke up outside. It's cold. I don't know how I got here. Please, let me in. The treacherous hope flared again, instantly smothered by the radio warning. Not themselves. Don't be deceived. Elara? I managed, my voice raspy. How did you get outside? A pause. Then, I don't know. It's confusing. I was just here. Please, honey, I'm scared. Struggle with nuanced memory. The answer felt vague, evasive. What's the last thing you remember clearly? I asked, forcing myself to follow the logic, the rules, despite the emotional agony tearing me apart. Another pause. Longer this time. Remember our trip? She finally said. Paris? The Eiffel Tower? You kissed me at the top. A memory, a real one, but generic. Something easily recalled, not nuanced, not emotionally complex. What about Dr. Evans? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, the name tasting like ash. Dr. Evans was her oncologist, the bearer of bad news. The name synonymous with hushed, tearful conversations, with despair. Silence, utter silence from the other side of the door. The scratching didn't resume. The pleading stopped. It was as if the question itself had caused a malfunction, a system error. Cannot replicate complex emotional responses. Minutes passed. Nothing. Had it gone? Or was it waiting? Learning? Adapting? The silence felt different now. Not just watchful, but calculating. I stayed by the door, straining my ears, every nerve frayed. If only I hadn't asked. If only I could pretend, just for a moment, that it was really her, cold and scared on the other side. The psychological torture was immense. Then movement at the kitchen window. A shadow flickered across the drawn blind. I aimed the maglite beam. Nothing, but the blind rustled slightly. I crept closer, heart pounding, pulled the edge of the blind back a fraction of an inch, and looked straight into Alara's eyes. She was standing right there, inches away, on the other side of the glass, her face pale in the moonlight, framed by familiar dark curls. Her eyes, they were wide, staring directly into mine. But they were wrong, utterly wrong. The pupils were dilated, filling almost the entire iris, and they didn't seem to focus. They reflected the flashlight beam with a faint, sickly greenish luminescence. Luminescence in optic nerves. Aberrant tracking. She didn't blink, didn't react to the light, just stared. And then, slowly, deliberately, she smiled. Not her warm, loving smile. This was wider, sharper, predatory, revealing slightly too many teeth that looked subtly wrong. I choked, stumbling back, letting the blind fall shut. It wasn't her. It was a monster wearing her face. The thing outside the window didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just remained, a terrifying presence inches away. Knowing I knew, I retreated further into the house, shaking violently. The bat felt useless. The chair wedged under the door seemed pathetic. How long until it found another way in? How long until Abernathy or Mateo or my father came back? I thought about the Garcias next door. Would they change now? Would they come knocking? The feeling of being surrounded, besieged by familiar faces turned monstrous, was suffocating. Escape. I had to escape. But where? The radio mentioned the hospital, Block C basement, a safe zone. But miles away, across a town populated by these echoes, and how to navigate without seeing them. Without them seeing me, it felt impossible. But staying here was death. Or worse. I gathered essentials, water bottle, protein bars, couldn't risk eating anything else. First aid kit, the radio, though likely useless now. Maglite bat, wrenched from a garage, stuffed them into a backpack. Every rustle, every creak of the house, sent jolts of adrenaline through me. The thing that looked like Alara was still outside the kitchen window. I could feel its presence, a cold weight against the glass. I had to leave through the front, praying my father wasn't waiting, praying Abernathy hadn't returned. I took a deep breath, unwedged the chair, unlocked the deadbolt, pulled the door open a crack, peered out. The street was empty, dark, silent, except down the block, under a flickering, dying streetlight I hadn't noticed before. Why was it working? Stood a small group, for maybe 5 figures, standing still, facing different directions, like forgotten statues. Echoes, waiting, patrolling. I slipped out, pulling the door shut quietly behind me, stayed low, hugging the shadows of bushes and hedges. My heart hammered against my ribs, loud in the stillness. Every fallen leaf crunched like breaking glass. I needed to get off Maple Street, cut through backyards toward the hospital on the other side of town. I vaulted the low fence into my neighbor's yard, not the Garcias. The other side, the Millers. Their house was dark, silent. But as I crept past their patio window, I saw movement inside. A faint light, maybe a candle, and a shape rocking back and forth in a chair. Facing away from the window, I didn't stop to look closer, just kept moving, deeper into the maze of darkened suburban backyards. Crossed another street, darted across another lawn, heard a low groan from a nearby house, quickly stifled, saw a curtain twitch in an upstairs window, though no light was visible. Fear was a constant, coppery taste in my mouth. Then I stumbled, literally, tripped over something soft in the darkness of someone's backyard, fell hard, scraping my hands on gravel. The maglite flew from my grasp, rolled away. I scrambled, feeling blindly. My hand touched fabric, cold fabric, jeans, a shirt, empty, lying in a heap on the grass, like someone had simply deflated, evaporated out of their clothes. Nearby lay a single shoe. What did this mean? Were they shedding skins? Or were some victims just consumed entirely? The mystery only deepened the horror. Found the maglite, its beam blessedly still working. Pushed myself up, heart pounding, and saw him, standing by the back fence of the yard I was in, Mr. Abernathy again, or the echo wearing his form. It stood unnaturally still, head tilted, watching me. Its eyes glowed faintly in the flashlight beam. It didn't approach, just watched. Assessing, I backed away slowly, never breaking eye contact, remembering the rule about pupil tracking, though I wasn't sure if not looking was better or worse. It remained motionless. I turned, ran, vaulting another fence, plunging deeper into the warren of yards. Glance back. Abernathy hadn't followed. They weren't all aggressive. Some just observe. Or maybe they had territories. The uncertainty was maddening. I reached the edge of the old town cemetery, a necessary shortcut to reach the hospital faster. Moonlight cast long, eerie shadows from the leaning headstones. The air here felt colder, heavier, the silence more profound. This felt like ground zero, like the source of the wrongness. I hesitated. Rule: avoid cemetery paths after sundown. Old superstition, maybe irrelevant now, but my gut screamed at me to go around. It would add time, exposed me longer on the streets. But the feeling of dread emanating from the graveyard was overwhelming. I skirted the edge, staying on the cracked pavement of the adjacent road. As I passed the main gate, iron bars twisted into Gothic shapes. I saw them, inside the cemetery. Dozens of figures, standing motionless among the graves. Some familiar faces I recognized from town, long deceased. Other strangers, all silent, all still, all facing outwards towards the town, like sentinels, or an army waiting for orders. I hurried past, heart pounding, not daring to look too closely. The hospital finally came into view, its dark bulk looming against the pre-dawn sky. Faint emergency lights glowed around one wing, Block C. Hope, fragile and desperate, surged. Almost there, I cut across the hospital parking lot, weaving between dark cars, reached the basement entrance described on the radio. Heavy steel door, slightly ajar, same as the radio host described, or a trap. I listened, faint generator hum. No voices, no scratching, just the heavy thrum of machinery. Took a breath, slipped inside, pulled the door shut. Dim corridor, signs pointing to shelter. Followed them, bat raised. Found the fortified area. Saw people inside, maybe 10 or 12, faces pale and drawn. A man who looked like a doctor. Thorne unbolted the door, let me in with a curt nod. Safety. Temporary, maybe, but safety? Relief washed over me in a dizzying wave. I spent the next hour huddled with the others, sharing fragmented stories, comparing horrifying encounters, trying to piece together the rules, the nature of the echo strain. Learned others had seen the empty clothes, encountered silent watchers, been tested by familiar voices. Learned about the toxic food rule the hard way from one poor woman whose husband had offered her his favorite pie. Learned the question about the moment of death really did seem to paralyze them briefly. Dawn began to break, the gray light filtering through basement windows. The generator sputtered, threatening to die. We were running out of time. Dr. Thorne decided 2 of us needed to scout outside, see if daylight changed anything. I volunteered. Needed to know. Needed to think about finding a way back. Maybe if Alara... No. Stop. Needed to survive. A young nurse named Sarah volunteered with me. Armed with flashlights and pipes, we ascended to the main level. The hospital was eerily silent. Deserted wards, overturned gurneys. We checked windows. Outside, Oakhaven looked deserted. No figures on the lawns, no watchers under streetlights. Maybe daylight drive them back? Sarah whispered, hope evident in her voice. We reached the main entrance. Sunlight streamed in. Looked clear. We stepped outside cautiously. Empty street. Silent houses. Had we survived the night? Had the nightmare ended with the dawn? We should report back, Sarah said, turning. I nodded, relief making me lightheaded. Then I saw it. My reflection in the large pane of glass beside the entrance door. Normal. Haggard, terrified, but me. Beside me, Sarah's reflection. Normal. But just behind her reflection, deep within the glass, barely visible, stood another figure. Tall, shadowy, indistinct. It looked like the echo of my father. It smiled a slow, cold smile and raised one hand, waving gently from within the glass. My blood froze. They weren't gone. Just hidden, receded into whatever dimension they came from, waiting for night or waiting within the reflections themselves. Sarah gasped. Mike, your reflection. I looked again. My reflection was still me, but its eyes, was there a faint greenish luminescence starting to gather in the pupils? Was my smile looking a little too fixed, a little too wide, or was it just the trauma, the fear, the exhaustion playing tricks? I couldn't be sure. I honestly couldn't be sure. I'm recording this now, back in the basement shelter. The generator is failing. Thorne says we have maybe an hour. We need to move, try to get out of Oakhaven. But the doubt, it's eating at me. Every time I catch my reflection in a polished surface, every time I hear my own voice echo slightly in these concrete walls, I wonder, did I look away fast enough? Did one of them touch me in the dark? Am I still me? The rules help you survive the night. But they don't tell you if you've already lost a war inside. If you're hearing this broadcast, heed the warnings. The dead are back, but they are hollow echoes. Don't trust their voices, their faces, their memories. Stick to the rules. Question everything, especially yourself. And if this warning reaches you and you find it resonates, maybe hit like, subscribe. Knowing someone somewhere is listening, maybe it helps keep the real me here. Or maybe it just gives the echo another voice to practice. Stay safe. Question everything.